Friends, tonight I want to thank my sixth grade teacher. She happened to be a Jewish teacher, was a member of the synagogue where I grew up, named Mrs. Handelman. And I thank her for making us memorize this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. She made us learn that. I remember going home and being scared that I was going to come to school and not be able to say it, but I passed. These words from the Declaration of Independence are what we celebrate on the 4th of July. Each year, we affirm the idea that our freedom and our liberty are God-given. They're not something that we're given. It's not something that we earn. It's something that we're born. Our DNA is about freedom and liberty. And indeed, there are 4 references to God in the Declaration of Independence. The laws of nature and of the nature of God entitle the United States to independence. Number 2, men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Congress appeals to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions. The signers, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, pledge to each other their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. But here's the beauty of the document. Yeah, God is mentioned in the Creator, God, whatever. But God is acknowledged only generically. There's no reference in the Declaration of Independence of a specific religion and their God. It's a God, a general idea of God. There is no reference, and I think that that enforces the idea that some want to challenge, is that America is not a Christian nation. The religious right is wrong about that. The founders understood that America would be pulled apart if we were founded on a specific religious tradition. That's something that the founders wanted to get away from. The Constitution does not mention God once. And the First Amendment makes it clear, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. When it comes to religion, government must protect religious freedom, and it should step aside. That's what the founders believed. That's what the country was supposedly founded upon. Do we still believe in religious freedom? Are we still vigilant in protecting the rights of minorities? Do we still understand the dangers of religious triumphalism? Now, something went wrong this week. And forgive me for another lesson from the Supreme Court, but I've given up the Torah. I just study Supreme Court decisions because you don't really need to go any further than that. So here's the deal. The United States Supreme Court issued a 6-3 decision in Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, ruling that the school district violated the football coach Joseph Kennedy's free exercise of religion and free speech rights. And I thank Nina Totenberg of NPR for her wonderful condensation of this case that I'm using, but I think we need to know exactly what we're talking about. The case began in 2015 when school administrators in Bremerton, Washington instructed Kennedy to stop his praying on the field at the end of the game. He refused. By the time of the homecoming game, Kennedy's media appearances had made him somewhat of a celebrity, and things in Bremerton had gotten so out of control that's in spite of extra police protection, the mainly pro-prayer crowd overwhelmed the field, knocking some of the band members and cheerleaders over. Kennedy, surrounded by TV cameras, and some players knelt to pray on the field while a state legislator placed his hands on Kennedy's shoulder in support. When you imagine this thing, you want to vomit. The school continued to tell Kennedy and his lawyers that it wanted to accommodate his wish to pray, but it wanted a less public demonstration of his faith because it said the post-game prayers would be seen as the school's endorsing religion. How could it not? Near the end of the season, after Kennedy repeatedly refused to stop his public praying, the superintendent placed Kennedy on paid administrative leave. Kennedy did not apply for a new contract the following year. Instead, he sued the school district, contending that it violated his right to free speech and the free exercise of religion. And of course, what does a person like this do? They move to Florida, the great bastion of liberalism and freedom, and, you know. That's where everyone goes. I was there for 12 years, and Jane and I escaped. It's a form of imprisonment. Writing for the majority, Justice Neil Gorsuch said that the school relied exclusively and improperly on concerns that the prayer should be viewed as a religious endorsement by the school, claiming that there was no evidence that students had been coerced. Gorsuch said, barring Coach Joseph Kennedy from praying on the 50-yard line at the end of each game was a form of hostility to religion in violation of the Constitution. Now, writing for the three liberal judges, I don't like the liberal conservative, but let's say, writing for the liberal judges, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said that Kennedy's prayer was neither private speech nor innocent. She pointed out that the fact that the coach conducted a media blitz leading ultimately to the field being stormed and students being knocked down, there's nothing neutral about that. And let me quote what she wrote. She said, schools face a higher risk of unconstitutionally coercing support or participation in religion or its exercise than any other government entities. This decision does a disservice to schools and the young citizens they serve, as well as our nation's longstanding commitment to the separation of church and state. Today's decision elevates the rights of a school coach who voluntarily accepted public employment over the rights of the students required to attend public schools and who may feel obligated to join in prayer. Now, think about it, how could a high school student not feel intimidation when a white male Protestant coach who happens to be a former Marine on a public school football stadium, football field after a game offering a prayer? How is that not intimidating? This is not a quiet, silent prayer. This was a coercive, loud prayer during the course of school duties by a school official who was hired in part to serve as a leader and role model for the students. He conveyed the reality that if you did not join his Christian prayer circle, you were not full and true teammate, and you might not even deserve to be playing on that team. Now, Gorsuch, so I started thinking about this. I said, what's going on with this man? I mean, why doesn't he quite get the reality of high school? No, the answer is no. So I did some research, and I asked the question, I Googled, where did the 6 Supreme Court justices that signed this thing, where did they go to high school? Now, you're going to know what the answer is, Nathan, because you're really way ahead of me. Okay, way ahead of me. And now, and I'm not criticizing where they went to school. Don't get me wrong. They can go to any school they want, but it gives them a perspective. Every one of them attended a Roman Catholic parochial high school. Every one of them. The elite, this Georgetown preparatory school. You can't get in the Supreme Court unless you go there, unless you go to this school. Where the elite go, which is fine. I'm for parochial education. They don't have a clue what it means to be a minority. They don't have a clue. They certainly don't understand what it means to be a non-Christian student in a Christian society, or a non-believer in the environment of overwrought religious zealots. And I'm not hyperventilating here. There was an incredible letter to the editor in the New York Times. I'm going to read it to you that I wish everyone would read. Rabbi Stephanie Alexander, a rabbi in South Carolina, a very distinguished Reform rabbi, she wrote on Wednesday. This is incredible. I mean, listen to this. Want to know the number, and I'm quoting from her letter, it's very short. Want to know the number one issue that I, as a rabbi, have been contacted about by students and families in our South Carolina public schools? Sports. Students who get benched because they don't join in the Christian team prayer before or after a game. Students who don't get playing time because they won't go to the Christian varsity or some other pizza lunch offered at school. Students who lose their starting spot on the team because they missed a game or even a practice for the high holidays. I believe that our founders are turning over in their grave. They would not accept our retrenchment from religious liberty. They would be offended by this kind of insensitivity. And I'm not claiming that everything was perfect since the founding of our nation. There's been a lot of forward and backward, but there's been a consistent thrust. And I think it's rooted in the founders' vision of a respect for religion and religious diversity. The understanding that we must not be tied up with government, and that there shouldn't be coercion or pressure and intimidation. No one person's prayer is better than another person's prayer. And God will hear your prayer even if you say it to yourself. Can't we find a way to honor our religious diversity? What's happened? This is the most lame and disappointing Supreme Court decision in the last 2 days. They keep coming. And I guess rabbis and ministers are saying a blessing underneath. Thank goodness, the material is too good. But accommodation, respect, restraint, tolerance, humility. Why can't we find these values? And I would assume that those would be religious values that people who seek so much prayer would want. Or is their prayer just about showboating in a kind of white Protestant triumphalism? It doesn't represent our country. It doesn't represent what people of serious people of Jews, Christian, Muslims, people of faith really believe. We have a vision of liberty in this country. And if we can't show accommodation, respect, restraint, tolerance, and humility, we are not the America that we seek to celebrate on this 4th of July. Shabbat Shalom.